Can you hear the ice machine back there? Is that too loud? Sorry.
I hear an ice machine, yeah.
It's still going.
You're in Florida. There's either an ice machine or people with mustaches are hunting down drug dealers. I know. Wow, my cultural stereotypes are cemented.
You're not far off.
They were cemented in 1983, and I'm still not far off, and it's 2014. The world is beautiful.
Hi, I'm Jackie Olive, and I'm the director of Always in Season, and you're listening to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley.
Hello there and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley. My name is Draxter Dupre. I'm here with Joe Yardley in our little attic studio, 1920s Berlin. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
Let's just reiterate that we don't live together.
It's your attic. I'm just visiting here.
I thought it's yours.
You pay the rent, remember? Sometimes.
As you heard in the station ID, our special guest today is Jackie Olive, the director of a documentary called Always in Season about the terrible practice of lynching in the United States, a common event with sometimes thousands of spectators in attendance, postcards made available to send to family as proof you attended, quote, justice, unquote, being served. The virtual reality part of this is that Jackie has developed and is refining an experience based on this film in Second Life, so we will talk about that and how the virtual world might, as Noni de la Peña said in episode 24, be an empathy machine, where we can learn more than anywhere else how something feels or has felt to others, other races, other generations, how it felt back then.
This is already happening.
I thought Second Life and virtual worlds are all about shopping therapy, and hanging out on the beach.
I've already been using it for historical experience and immersion and trying to find out more about what life was for our ancestors, for the last 5 years or so.
You are, of course, one of the successful examples how this works because you connect with an audience that really seeks this type of content.
Yes and no. I think that quite a few of the visitors don't come to 1920s Berlin at all because they're interested in 1920s Berlin or even in Berlin or history or whatever. They just happen to visit it and fall in love with the place or the community, and then we learn them lots of stuff whether they want to or not.
I think that there is a high likelihood if you create a historical place that is always happening with either active role players or people who live there or NPCs, that you will have people going there, and then you get all this other content on top, all the history that is not always very pleasant.
I think Second Life is perfect, and virtual reality in general, for giving people a unique experience of being someone else. And it doesn't matter if you do that, for history education or social education, or you want to find out what it's like to being handicapped or being someone of a different gender.
I'm completely convinced that that is really the only way where we can move forward, where there's so many stereotypes, so many assumptions, terrible things sort of festering for hundreds and hundreds of years sometimes between race relations, national relations, all sorts of relations.
I mean, it won't do any harm, and it will probably help quite a few people, but of course you have to first get over that threshold of wanting to go there, because there are movies, documentaries and books that will completely change your ideas on loads of subjects, but you have to be willing to try them out. I mean, I can imagine that if you are a believing in a neo-Nazi, that you are just not that interested in going to try an experience that will teach you what it was like for Jewish people.
That's why I think you have to trick him.
Yeah. Come to neo-Nazi sim and have lots of fun being a neo-Nazi. Oh, now we told you something about how terrible it was.
Let's say a neo-Nazi puts on an Oculus Rift in the future once they become freely available, or any other goggles, and purchases an online experience, neo-Nazi land, and then we just hack into it and then kind of shift them to 1920s Berlin, where you guys are discussing, I don't know, Kristallnacht or something. Re-education camp.
We've had a few subtle arguments and discussions with people wandering into 1920s Berlin who then turned out to be rather big fans of that little Austrian guy called Hitler. They didn't last very long, and they were, they were suddenly having this argument with people who were immersed in 1920s Berlin and talking to him from that point of view. Not politics, not we know what happened during the war, but this is 1920s Berlin. There's a Jewish family living around the corner, and they are very nice. What the hell are you talking about? What's wrong with them? What are you going on about?
I think you can probably make a quick decision if there is someone willing to engage with, or you are willing to spend time with them, or just basically ban them, right?
Yeah, it is a fine line, and sometimes we've got a few rules. When someone's there and you get this really strong feeling that they secretly just want to run around shouting Heil Hitler, then it's quite easy. And if they get too offensive and they just start spouting their nonsense instead of actually role playing and debating, then it's usually not a very long visit.
We got to get through the housekeeping notes, and then we have this really great beginning of the discussion today. We also, at the end of the show, by the way, we'll be hearing from Los Angeles-based artist Chris Showmaker, who has done tremendous work on avatar identity and body image in both worlds, actually. We put the word out a couple of weeks ago that you can win a Leap Motion if you leave a good question for co-founder of Leap, David Holtz. There's a handful of folks that have commented already. Very good question. We're continuing this contest. If you will, please leave us a question for 26-year-old whiz kid David. My question is, of course, why is the Leap not working in Second Life? God damn it! And Loki Elliott sent me this super cool video from the Leap Motion 3D Jam, which was presented by Indiecade, that independent game conference in LA. This is an amazing video. It's called Weightless. It's a demo by Martin Schubert, and you're floating in space, in a space station. You see objects floating around you. You can touch them and hit them with your hands.
Fantastic.
That are tracked by the Leap, yeah. You can change the trajectory, obviously, of these objects by hitting them in certain ways.
That is one of those experiences that will cross borders, that will bring people to virtuality who are perhaps not that interested, because it's one of those things that most people think, oh, I would love to be weightless and go to space, and this is how they can experience it, and it looks like a very fun experience, something great to do. It might be one of those things that people who don't care much for virtuality say, oh, hang on a minute, this is kind of fun.
And that's why this endless discussion, the discussion that never will end in the Second Life community, is the rising tide lifting all boats, and I do maintain it is. And Linden Lab is on track with Second Life 2.0. I think virtual worlds as a continuum, as a place that is interconnected, has validity and will be revisited with this new trend of virtual reality.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, there's a lot of people arguing against it. They go like, yeah, this will very much succeed, all these little experiences, but it will do nothing for virtual world. It will not grow the sector of virtual worlds. I completely disagree.
Yeah, that sounds like a bit of a daft thing to say. I mean, who doesn't want to go and try some stuff yourself once you've got your virtuality gear?
Yeah, I don't know where the argument comes from. A lot of people say virtual worlds as a concept is just too kind of heady or whatever. People are not interested in, creating an avatar and going through all these hoops. They just want to go in and be a little weightless and then go back out and go to dinner. I think that's the main argument. I don't even know what the argument is, actually. But
Well, it's all nonsense.
Good. If you say so, then it is. Please, commenters, comment on that. There's a lot of comments about us and me saying that they should bring merch and stuff like that. Very interesting discussions around the blogosphere. Of course, as a self-involved person such as yourself, I'm glad that people are talking about me.
Yeah, I read somewhere, who's that English chick? And I was going, what? Me? English?
I think now is the time for you to go into your Australian accent to throw people off.
Oh, yeah, I know, mate. I think it's great.
Anyway, send us your questions about Leap. You can also
do Irish as well, like.
You can also get in touch with us. We read everything. We're slow to respond. Sometimes we apologize. Send us an email to radio@draxfiles.com. Send us a voicemail on Skype, Draxfiles. Ping the avatar in world. You can support this show by becoming a sponsor with your own banner or visiting the sponsors. Ping us if you like to advertise. We'll throw you that neat little subscription device made by Chris Lehman from Botanical. It's $100, $100 linden dollars per month. That's $25 linden dollars per show for a voluntary subscription. Let's go through the news real quick. We need to go to Jackie's interview. We're blah-blahing all over the place.
Yeah.
You sent me something that we can be on stage with Paul McCartney. See, there you go. That's virtual reality.
Yeah, that's another one of those experiences that will reach a wide audience of people who are not perhaps interested in VR at all.
Yeah, and it will do absolutely nothing for Second Life or any virtual world.
Yeah, perhaps, unless people realize that this experience is virtual reality, and that virtual reality is actually cool, and that Second Life is also a virtual reality.
And maybe also if people are then interested in creating something themselves, enjoy user-created content vis-a-vis Paul McCartney, who is not user-created. He is Paul McCartney created. Anyway, Jaunt is that company that makes a stereoscopic camera rig, and they filmed a Paul McCartney concert in San Francisco, and you can download this video right now from Google Play for the Google Cardboard goggles that you can build yourself around your smartphone. And then you can watch the gig as if you'd been there. You can look around. You can look at any angle. You can look back at the audience. I suppose you're standing in the midst of the audience, possibly not on stage. I suppose the experience is not available yet for Samsung's Gear VR and the Oculus Rift. It will be coming soon. Speaking of Gear VR, real quick, Samsung Gear VR is going to be available for Christmas for $199.
Excellent. That is a good price.
Cha-ching!
Even I could afford after a couple of months of hard work.
DMCA issues in Second Life. Let's talk briefly about the DMCA issues. And next week or the week thereafter, I haven't decided yet, we'll have a panel discussing this because this is really rampant.
Yeah, it's getting out of hand.
Beleza is a skin brand in Second Life, and they're being bombarded with DMCA notices, takedown notices, apparently alleging copyright infringement with their line of mesh bodies called Venus. DMCA stands for Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It came out in 1996 to combat digital copyright violation. I mean, it's been said numerous times that it's a very, very ineffective tool to actually combat that. In the case of Beleza, this is pretty apparent that they're being bullied by people that just want to hurt their business, so they have to take down their products.
Yeah.
And with Beleza, apparently they already took down all their skins from the Venus brand. I haven't seen anything by them on the marketplace. I have to investigate in World. But this is obviously an effective way in Second Life and in other realms to take out the competition until it's further investigated. And apparently stuff is taken down immediately once a DMCA is filed within Second Life.
It seems that Linden Lab is really, really quick at making people give in and stop doing their work, without there actually being any evidence from, the party that's claiming all these things.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing is that they're obliged to do that as a company. We have to research that and do a special show on it, because I think that's why this is so problematic. We need to talk to Brooke Linden, who runs the marketplace, about that, because I think this ties also in with false tagging. Right now on Marketplace, you see tons. If you look for Beleza, you see tons of stuff tagged with Beleza.
That's insane.
So first you take your opponent out with the DMCA, and then you tag your own stuff with that opponent's good brand name. But hey, then the cops are on your trail pretty fast too. So
yeah,
this is a means, but it's very obvious that in this case, this is a bullying move. There was a company called WowMay. They had pulled out of SL temporarily. Also make mesh bodies, but they're coming back. I hope to have them on the show. Our sponsor, Diane Koba from Vika Creation, sent me an email a couple of weeks ago, and she said she's going to get out of the business of mesh bodies because she can't afford to fight back. I mean, you got to get lawyers and everything.
Whatever happened to, innocent until proven guilty? Where is the evidence? I mean, if there is some a little tiny bit of evidence that suggests that there may be something going on, then you can always, pull the plug and investigate it. But if there is, nothing, you have to first bring up, some evidence.
What happens to that? That's a good question.
Of course, most business owners in Second Life, are making peanuts. The second something like this happens, even if you could afford a lawyer, then, it's probably not worth the hassle.
Jamie Hancroft sent me a message, and this is related because Jamie, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, she says that, there are Disney characters in world. As avatars, there are Disney-derived decorations that are being sold.
Maybe that's because Disney themselves have to actually claim something or take steps. And who cares about Second Life?
That's exactly the reason. On YouTube, that stuff is taken down really fast. Also, with music, by the way, and with audio, YouTube has an algorithm that can detect music that is administered by a publishing company. They check it against their records. But you put the nail on the head, as they say, or do they say that nobody really cares about Second Life? So Disney is like,
whatever.
Let these kids play with our characters.
I think they probably don't even know.
A few more items on ultrasound solves possibly the issue of tactile feedback with virtual reality holograms. There's a really interesting story with a video where researchers have used ultrasound to create feedback when you actually touch a virtual object, a hologram. So when you touch the hologram, ultrasound waves that are inaudible, obviously, are being sort of pushed against your hand. So you feel the pressure against your hand as if you're kind of pushing into an object or touching that object. So that's really interesting because you solve the problem of this whole tactile thing when people always say, I'm not interested in virtual reality because I can't feel it.
Of course, right now it only works as some sort of flat surface table where you put your hand on. How's that going to work if you're walking down a street in Berlin and you are touching something that's on the floor? It's going to be quite complicated to make sure that the sound waves reach your hand somewhere in your room.
It goes back to all these different fragmented technologies to work in sync, basically. An omnidirectional treadmill, an ultrasound emitting apparatus.
But, it's where we're going.
These are researchers from the University of Bristol, so this is very much in the early stages of research, but it's nonetheless a really great direction, almost similar to a very kind of unorthodox direction. As you remember, Ebbe told me that they're evaluating technologies that can detect from your speech how your mouth looks, from your speech how your lower part of your face actually is expressing itself.
You have to shape your mouth in a certain way to make certain noises.
Now, lastly, President Obama is being scanned in the White House, and that's courtesy of University of Southern California Institute of Creative Technologies. We had Jackie Moy on, who worked there for a long time. Noni de la Peña developed all her virtual reality journalism there. Also, Oculus founder Paul Malaki was there at some point. So these guys from ICT put a light stage array, as they call it. It's a system with 8 cameras, some of them cheapy little GoPros, and 50 LED lights. They put that system up, and the president sits there, and then the system can capture detailed shape and reflections and different properties of those reflections of a face. The lights go on and off in different combinations. It's amazing. It just takes a couple of seconds. And this is the same system that Noni de la Peña uses for her virtual journalism pieces, where she creates the protagonists of her stories. And then they're, of course, fully animated and with full facial expression. So this is just the first step to scan the head. And let me play a little soundbite by this guy from the Smithsonian Digitization Office. The German guy, of course, Günter Weibel.
Of course.
He's behind all this. Making the president an artificial intelligent being.
So the Germans are scanning the American president.
Exactly. Hey,
suspicious.
Wait a minute. 20% of our audience goes like, see, I told you he was a Kenyan Marxist, puppeteered by the Germans. There is proof right there. We got proof. Here's Günter Weibel.
The inspiration for the project of creating a 3D portrait of President Obama really comes from the Lincoln Life Mask in our National Portrait Gallery. And I have a Lincoln life mask with me today, and they're called life masks because these were directly taken from his likeness. So there was plaster put on his face, there were 2 little holes poked where the nostrils were so he could still breathe, and seeing that made us think, what would have happened if we could actually do that with a sitting president, using modern day technologies and tools.
They already have 3D laptop and computer cameras that are working. I think they are experimenting with that at the high fidelity club.
Exactly. The High Fidelity Club. We are part of this club, but we never show up. No, you're absolutely right. And the Asus the cameras that are, they're freely available. They're $150. The ones that are in the Kinect.
We ain't seen nothing yet, as the song goes.
And I also got to say that this whole thing reminds me of a Philip K. Dick novel from 1964 called The Simulacra, where the president is in fact an android, and there is conspicuous consolidation of political and broadcast media power. The Democratic and Republican parties, they're merged into a single party, the Democratic Republican Party, and there is corporate media. There's only one network because everything merged. How wrong did Philip go with this future? I mean, Philip K. Dick. I mean, not, the other Philip may also have gotten something wrong.
Yep.
There are only two Philips, and we know who they are. So that's it. Let's go to our feature section. Jackie Olive, director, producer of the documentary Always in Season. It's about the history of lynching in this country, in the United States, You're not in this country, I am.
That is true.
The film follows several storylines and interviews witnesses of these horrific events, centering around a survivor of a lynching that took place in 1940. In Marion, Indiana, by the name of James Cameron, he became a very important civil rights activist. So why are we talking about this film on a Metaverse podcast, you possibly ask? Well, it's because there is maybe more to virtual reality than immersive gaming, as we said at the top of the hour. Maybe there is a unique possibility to travel back in time, to inhabit someone else's body and life, in order to really feel what happened then and there, a place we have never really been. I worked with Jackie's team at the Bay Area Video Coalition Producers Institute in 2010. Just a little bit more context about the Bay Area Video Coalition. They're located in San Francisco, and the Producers Institute, it brings filmmakers together with new media people to show these sometimes a little old school filmmakers how cool it would be to extend the social issue that their film sort of is about to new platforms, and to kind of extend the message of the film to these other platforms. And Second Life was a staple there. There was a lot of stuff I helped work on, including something for the Pulitzer Institute. But this project also had Azri Falcone, clothing designer in Second Life, as part of the team to develop Always in Season with Jackie. And we were developing a component to the film that would use Second Life's possibilities to engage viewers on a deeper level than even a really great film such as this one does. All that and more about how we got there and what the status of this project is on our blog. But let's listen to Jackie. And before we get into the possibilities of a virtual world for a social cause film, here she is describing what her film is about.
Always in Season is a documentary that looks at the lingering impact of almost a century of lynching African Americans. And so I film in 3 communities where lynchings happened, following the stories of relatives of the perpetrators and victims who are coming together with other folks in the community to look at how they can find justice and reconciliation.
And there was one lynching at the center of the film.
In Monroe, Georgia, which is like half an hour outside of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. And when did that take place?
In 1946, July 25th, 1946. And every year they reenact that lynching around that date, around the 25th of July, annually for the last 10 years.
Did you talk for the film with people who were present at that time too?
No, I've talked with relatives of the victims who were alive at the time. And I've also talked with a woman, Olivia Taylor, who's one of the main people featured in the film, who actually witnessed a lynching when she was 3. And so her father was part of the Klan and a leader in that area at that time. And she has a lot to say. There's a lot of really vivid, very detailed stories that are horrific and also really fascinating, in that you get a really unusually intimate look at what it's like to be a child who grows up in the Klan. One of the things that she talks about is how her father stored a cross that they used to use for cross burnings in her closet, and it was lit with Christmas lights. And so there's that kind of really interesting combination of, again, like this horror of the brutality that she was keenly aware of, and also the innocence of her childhood that you can hear in her voice when she's talking about it.
So she was aware of that brutality and that it is just fundamentally wrong at an early age. Is that what she expresses?
She was. She said that she knew instinctively that something was wrong, but she couldn't do anything about it. So she actually didn't even talk about it. As a matter of fact, it was kind of policy for the Klan that children couldn't talk about being in the Klan or that their family was in the Klan. So she didn't talk about any of that brutality well into her adulthood. And so she carries a lot of guilt and pain because of it.
Do you have any other people in the documentary who came to a conclusion that what they were engaged with was wrong at maybe a later stage in life?
I'm thinking Monroe. No. I'm thinking Duluth. No. And I'm thinking Lawrence. No. Mm-hmm. No.
Mm-mm. Me as an immigrant to this country, a privileged white immigrant, and we'll talk about this later, hopefully a little bit more in depth. I was, when I met you at BayVac and working on this project with the Second Life component, I was really not aware how late actually lynchings actually did happen. So how late did they actually happen?
So the story in Monroe happened in 1946. And so that's why I chose that, aside from the fact that it's really dramatic footage, the reenactments. But I also liked the fact that it highlights the fact that lynchings happened. That was my mother's generation. So that was just a generation ago. But they also, the last documented lynching, the last brutality, the brutal murder that's actually called a lynching was in 1980. And it was the lynching of a young man in Mobile, Alabama, which is just 40 miles from where I live right now. I believe his name is Michael McDonald.
When you say, again, with the reenactment, so is it like an outdoor theater performance of some kind where then somebody steps in and says, no, this is wrong? And how does it unfold and how does it end? Is there a good ending to it?
The best parallel is that it's similar to Confederate war reenactments. So it's a lot more organic and grassroots than outdoor theater, but it does have the same level of drama and it has the same level of intention. And so the town doesn't reenact it. It's actually a group of people, multiracial group of people that come out of Atlanta, because most people in the town of Monroe don't like the reenactments and don't want to have anything to do with it.
That was my next question. I mean, how do they feel?
Yeah, it's very controversial for a number of reasons. I think mostly because people don't like that level of brutality reflected back at them.
Maybe people just want to kind of push stuff under the rug.
Most people don't want to confront it. Most people have issues with the facts. And so there's this question in my film about generational memory versus documentation and facts. And so what actually is the truth about what happened when there's this level of denial that happened immediately after lynchings. And so all that information was cut off. And so Black people in that community and relatives of the victim argue for one thing, and it's one of the things that's highlighted in the lynching reenactment, is that one of the victims, Dorothy Malcolm, was pregnant and that they cut the baby from her stomach. And so a lot of people will say that that's too brutal and there's no information or no documentation that that was the case. But when coroners came to collect the body, and reporters came, and reporters who have reported in the past about lynchings not to talk about it, have told the community not to talk about it. So it's very unlikely that they would have documented any of that information anyway. People think that that's so grotesque that it must be made up, but there's actually a lynching of Mary Turner where that happened, where she was pregnant and the baby was cut out of her stomach. So that's happened before in history. And so the controversy is around the facts and also the level of brutality. But people reenact Confederate war reenactments all the time. And people died by the thousands, and that was much more bloody event.
I don't know, it seems grotesque to me to argue about the level of brutality while hanging a person is, I mean, it's brutal in its own right. It's like, yeah, it's kind of 20% brutal, which is fine. But if you go over the 22%, then that's wrong. I mean, isn't that bizarre?
It is bizarre. And the thing is, one of the things that really made me want to, people often ask, why am I looking at lynchings of African Americans? And I would say, first of all, is that they're my people. Secondly, that the level of brutality that victims of lynchings who were African American had to deal with, had to be subjected to, was unparalleled. And so during this period of the film that I'm looking at between about 1882 to 1964, when there were more than 5,000 lynchings, The lynchings weren't just a hanging, not that that's not brutal enough, but they were often tortured, mutilated, and photographed over a period of hours.
And then the postcards were sent around as a kind of a token of, I don't know what, like I've been at this event and I'm proud of it, kind of insanity.
It was a show of power. The question about whether or not those facts or those details were factual, I think is really second to the fact that these lynchings happened and it was brutal. And so to not talk about it at all because it might not have been as brutal, I think is really a ridiculous argument.
How many people showed up on average or on these specific ones?
Well, in Lawrence, South Carolina, which is one of the communities where we're featuring, and also in Duluth, Minnesota, the estimate is that about 2,000 people showed up at both of those lynchings. In Monroe, Georgia, they were Klans members. And people often think that lynchings happen in the backwoods by the Klan. That's actually a rarity. Most often lynchings happened in the middle of day, in broad daylight, by ordinary men. And in this case, there's suggested that there was a woman who was involved with this lynching. Totally socially accepted. And so at this lynching in Monroe in particular, there were about probably 20 to 50 people there, depending on the information, the source of your information. But people also think that lynchings were spontaneous, and they were at times very planned and very organized. So there would be flyers sent out, telegram invitation to a lynching, which you'll see in the film, and people would send notes to schools excusing their children to attend, and reserve excursion trains for people to come out of town for lynchings. And so that's the essence of the title, is that they were so organized and they were so brutal that they were akin to the sport of hunting, and Black people were always in season.
The reason why I wanted to interview you, apart from that this is such an awesome, fascinating project, is that we met at the Bay Area Video Coalition, and there was a Second Life component to this that we kind of prototyped and put into a little promotional film. And let me ask you, because I remember this so vividly, that there was a lot of concern also coming from Tony Walsh, who's a great game designer and a very early Second Life enthusiast, and he was very much against using an open environment like Second Life to make an interactive component to your film. And I was kind of against it, but he made very good arguments. He said, people are going to come in, they're going to go nuts, they're going to play KKK, let's say, or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciated that argument because it's true. And you don't want to re-victimize a people who've already experienced trauma around lynching. And so I try to be really sensitive to that. That's why this Second Life environment, once we get it up and running, will be facilitated. Let me just say that the Second Life project is about replicating a lynching in a virtual space where it's safe to do that, and people can be open and really can be anonymous in a way that means that I don't just simply say I wouldn't have done that at the time, but I can actually see what I would have done in an anonymous, safe space. And so the idea is that the crowd, the visitors, monitor each other, and that there's some monitoring and oversight and maintenance on my part as a producer.
So you have to kind of monitor this, and then people will also monitor each other. But people could, if they wanted to, feel how it was if you were in the position of the, what is the appropriate term, the henchman or the
lyncher. The lyncher.
It enables me to go in there and actually play that role as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the features, it's a role-playing environment, and one of the features is that if you're playing the role of a victim, then you have to reverse roles and play the role of a lyncher. And if you're playing the role of a lyncher, then you must see what it's like from the victim's perspective, and also from the spectators in the crowd. One of the key things about this project is that people get to be a part of the lynch mob, not for some spectacle reason, but to understand those choices and circumstances that brought ordinary people out to lynchings, when they may not have come, when they may have just heard the noise and been attracted to that environment, or when they may have been very intentionally coming to cheer on the lyncher. They can understand what those choices are that can escalate or de-escalate violence. And so you get the opportunity to save the victim's life or you get the opportunity to see what those behaviors are that you can engage in or that you choose to engage in that might mean costing the victim's life.
And that is really the power. I mean, there's nothing as powerful as a virtual world where you can inhabit these different roles. I mean, not only different roles within a system or within society or a town, but also a different gender, maybe a different ethnicity.
Yes. Yeah. It was one of the things that made me really excited when I was working with you guys, because I hadn't anticipated that aspect, that you're so anonymous, that it really is a matter of what you will instinctually do in that situation. You get to see on much more of an experiential level the kind of things that you would do in a mob.
Second Life is only semi-anonymous in the sense that when you get identified, or when you identify yourself with your avatar and you go in and you're part of the Second Life culture, like for example, if I would go in as Drax Dupre and I would then play the lyncher, and then my name tag is over my head, although I look different, I'm very well associated with my name, so it's actually me doing it. So I would have to go in, I guess, with an undercover alt. Or maybe it would be even more powerful for me to go in as myself, because to me, my avatar is me. For me, it would have an incredible impact, and I would probably be very, very shaken, because to me, this is very real.
Yeah, I think it's one of the beauties of it is that you have the choice. You can even go into the mob and not take an active role. You can just simply stand back and be a spectator. The other thing that we offer is a tour. To help facilitate the experience so that you get a full sense of the context of the environment and that history.
Yeah, you're bringing in the real world into the virtual world with the with photographs and films and historical material that you have. There's always this debate, and again, this is in concept, and I hope you get all the funding ducks in a row so that it really comes to fruition, because the interactivity of Second Life today and what Linden Lab is cooking up with the next version is so much more advanced than what was possible in 2009 when we worked on it, 2010. But now here's always and not only with Second Life, but there's always this preaching to the choir kind of thing. Now, and the same was true with Virtual Guantanamo that Noni made. Now, if I have this gigantic virtual universe when I come home from work, why would I go into a replica or a reenactment of this terrible thing versus going on to a beach with a bikini?
I think a lot of people are like me. They're interested in social issues. So when I was in Second Life regularly, I gravitated more to I like to call this an edusocial space. So more of an educational social space, an environment that's not completely controlled, not feeling like a game, but where I can learn and I can also have diverse experiences. And so I think this is just one of the many really valuable experiences that you can have in Second Life. The plan is to make the film available in universities and colleges. And so there's the opportunity then for college students who may already be taking courses in Second Life to also share this experience. And so there's a natural connection between the subject matter and what people are already doing in Second Life.
Tell me about, from your point of view as a documentary filmmaker, it's also really split. You saw that at BAVAC with some folks who are very resistant to any type of social media component to their films. They're very kind of, let's just call it old school for lack of a better word. I want to have this shown on PBS, and then I'm going to be happy and I can drink my champagne and that's it. While, of course, the Second Life component to your film is obviously extending it, is making it available 24/7, is engaging in a dialogue, in a two-way street. As good as a documentary film is, it can never be that two-way street all the way through. What would you say to these filmmakers that are that want the old model back?
Yeah, I understand. I remember that actually, and I'll have to say. That the film industry has actually gotten a lot more open to transmedia. And, that's the term of the day. But the idea is that you have these extensions on digital media platforms for storytelling. And I think that definitely since 2010, there's been a lot more embracing of the idea and the kind of it broadens your audience, but it also gives you a lot more flexibility in telling a story that even film can give, which is the exciting thing about me. It gives much more of an experience, virtual world in particular. And I still hear those conversations, but my estimation is about 5% of my colleagues I talked to about it.
So when the Second Life component to your film will go live, is it planned to, and we discussed this also back at BAVEC, do you think it's necessary to have additional materials, for example, to disseminate this after the fact when a class goes in, for example? I think that's what we had discussed, and to me that always made sense, that there has to be maybe some sort of questionnaire or some sort of task to write an essay about your experience, so that it just doesn't stand alone and you're just left with all that.
I think definitely something along the lines of educational modules that we put together for films, so that classrooms can understand films and the themes and the material, particularly if it's a social issue-driven subject, I think is necessary for Second Life. And definitely machinima, the work that you do is really powerful in explaining the project and the process.
That's what the kids could do. Now I'm thinking, let's say you go in there with a school class, and then everyone is tasked maybe to interview someone that played some other part, and then make a machinima of it. Could be very short, but basically a profile of someone else who talks in character how their experience was.
Oh, I love that idea. It's perfect.
Yeah, because then you really you disseminate the experience.
In the process of creating the machinima, then they get to process a lot of really heavy information that they just got through understanding, and then showing their perspective, which I think is really powerful.
What's the biggest obstacle to making a documentary film today in America?
I think you know what that is, Drax. It's funding.
Yeah.
Funding.
It's not gotten any better.
Yeah, it is for me. If I were independently wealthy, then it'd be a breeze. But I like to say too, I just had this conversation. I've been screening the film a lot lately, the work in progress of the film, because we're still in post-production. But if I had been given the money that I needed, roughly $300,000 to $400,000, I've been working on this project for 5 years. If I had been given it 4 years ago, it would have been a very different film. And so the value of that is that I get to live with the story and I get a deeper understanding of the story. The downside is that, I have to continue to fundraise.
Wow, so that's tremendous patience. So but when you say work in progress, is the general narrative ready to go, or is there still also footage that you want to shoot that you think needs to be shot or inserted? Or
yeah, so we've finished principal filming. We'll probably have to do some follow-up interviews, but we've finished most of the shooting and have just started to edit. And so I'm really working on raising the money again to do an assembly cut, to start an assembly cut, and then hopefully have a rough cut around February, March.
Let me ask you again, going back to Second Life now, when the film is then fully done, when it's fully financed and you're fully done, what does your ideal Second Life project look? If you could summarize that, and listeners will have seen, because I posted on the blog, will have seen the thing that we did at BAVEC, so it kind of describes what is happening. But what is your ideal sort of wish list? What should happen in the Second Life component?
The space will be a replica of Marion, Indiana. And so I chose Marion, Indiana because there were two men lynched there by the name of Smith and Shipp, their last name, young men, 19, 20, 21 or so. And there was a third child, I was going to say man, but he was really a child, 16-year-old James Cameron, who they were trying to lynch, and they had the rope around his neck. And the only thing that saved his life was that someone stepped forward and said that he was innocent. And so that saved his life. He was, of course, then incarcerated for 5 years, and it totally changed the trajectory of his life. He went on to live until he was 92. And he passed away a year before I started researching this project. And so I've always been fascinated with that story and about how one act of courage and one act of dissent can save a life. James Cameron went on to be president of the NAACP in his state and opened the Black Holocaust Museum. And so he was a wonderful man. And the idea is that you step into Main Street, Marion, Indiana, where the lynching happened in the middle of the courthouse square, and become one of the participants. And so you're either one of the crowd of thousands that were there, gathered there for that lynching, or you're the lyncher, or you're one of the victims. In that process, ideally, with funding, you'll have that experience, and you'll again understand what those choices and circumstances are that brought people out, and that escalated the situation. And then you'll also be able to do things like go to websites so that you can see other resources on the information on issues like restorative justice, on issues of racism and how to stop racism and hatred, and all of those kind of related issues of bullying, of homophobia, that kind of thing.
Now, Second Life 2.0, we've been talking about it on the podcast. Linden Lab is very quietly working on Second Life 2, which will be just like Second Life, but better. And you will actually, maybe there will be a possibility to actually have a concurrency of avatars of maybe thousands or maybe more. That's been rumored. Would then the experience, do you envision it to be open 24/7? To maybe walk around in the town? I always envisioned also non-player characters maybe being there, or other people who play regular townspeople. My co-host Joe Yardley runs 1920s Berlin, and there's only one non-player character who is the streetcar driver. But the technology is moving so fast, it might be actually feasible to have non-player characters around so that it's always populated. Maybe they talk with people, like a fully vibrant place, either with non-player characters or people who would like to role play there, or greeters who are in certain roles, maybe even the shopkeeper or whoever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely visualize it as a vibrant environment, and one that where you can take a tour and it's facilitated with a host, or you can roam around on your own if you'd like. But the idea, and also there'll be Autobots in the crowd, right? And so once you're in the lynch mob, and there could be an Autobot sheriff that steps next to you and say, okay, here's the key to the jail. And then you have to make the choice about what you want to do with it. Or just someone to prod you to say, step forward and let's go get him. And whether you step forward or not, then determines whether or not the lynching is carried out. And so there's that kind of random environment. I think that's really great because it most accurately represents the real world. And also people can come in and they can play roles, but the idea is that it's facilitated. Plan is to partner with the university to maintain it. And so that will really depend on the hours that the university is able to do. Then I suspect it won't be 24 hours. I suspect that it will be available for long periods of time.
You're also saying that there should be a live person basically there as a greeter versus fully automated process.
There'll always be a live person there, and they'll be greeting the people as they come in, and you can take a tour with them and maybe a few other people, or you can wander around the space on your own, but it'll be facilitated in some kind of way.
It's just like you said earlier with your film. If somebody would have given you the money back then, it would have been a different film. So in a way, the good thing about the bad thing is that you're maybe learning and maybe you're rewriting or rethinking things in your head. Definitely with the Second Life component, it's a good thing that is not done, because there's so much more possible when you add the other hardware stuff, the Oculus or something, which, it's not necessary. It's icing on the cake, but it adds another component of immersion.
Yeah, the exciting thing is that as the technology evolves, the space can evolve.
Okay, final question. What this project shows is, I don't know, is that a scientific term, the bystander syndrome? Is that even a term?
It's groupthink, like group mentality, I think is the... Mm-hmm.
The fact that, like in the story with James Cameron, that somebody steps forward and then really is able to make people do the right thing and stand up, people who are normally quiet. So you can tie this in and with bullying today, or with in schools or in the workplace. But let's tie this in, please, with what's happening today systemically. Do you have any hope that a film like yours and an experience like this in Second Life has a positive impact on, well, what we have to call the systemic racism in this country? I mean, does media, I guess this is the big question always, does any type of media, a really well researched and in-depth documentary film, an article, a game for good, what power does it have? Can it change anybody's mind?
Absolutely. I think it's very powerful. I just screened the film, and a guy in the audience a young white guy who's probably in his 30s, said that he's going back to research his family and to see how his family's story connected with lynching. That's powerful because he could have never known. And then what he does with that could grow. And so in the same way as in Second Life is that once people understand what happened, they understand the dynamics, my hope is that they'll take the lessons from that. And with a lot of, again, it's an edusocial space. And so with a lot of information about what you can do to create a safe space for people instead of a space of hatred, then you can change your own community.
So that was Jackie Olive. Her film Always in Season is still in work in progress, still fundraising. She mentioned Autobots a couple of times in that interview. She means non-player characters, basically. But we always envisioned, even back then in 2010, that these non-player characters would be able to respond in speech. So that will be, in fact, really cool. I also want to give a shout out to Tony Walsh, who I mentioned. He was in Second Life under the avatar name Zero Grace. He was part of the advising team at Bay Area Video Coalition when we started to put the Second Life component to this film together. Also, Azri Falcone, who appeared in the documentary Life 2.0, was on board developing costumes for the avatars. So, listeners, contact Jackie Olive. Contact her also if you're a Second Life developer. If you're interested in teaming up with her and showing her possibilities that were not possible in 2010 when we started developing this.
Well, there is a lot that wasn't possible in 2010.
Yeah.
There are so many potentials here.
I think the really big thing also about this project is non-player characters.
I mean, can you imagine what kind of experience that is? Being part of a crowd, or having some sort of experience that will completely change how you see certain things. I mean, that's amazing.
There were actually thousands of spectators at these lynchings, and that's, of course, something that is not possible in Second Life today, but that is being discussed and very much in the design of Second Life 2.0. Unfortunately, we couldn't play that audio with Bagman, but that's as much as I will say, is that they're very conscious of the success of Second Life 2.0 hinges on that possibility that you can really put thousands of people, if you want that, into one space.
I have a city, 920s Berlin. It's a city. It should be crowded all the time.
Right.
There should be, when you walk in, there should be at least 100, maybe 200-300 people in one region, just walking around, driving cars, giving you that feeling of this is a busy city.
Well, we're at the end of the show on this depressing note.
Sorry.
Before we go to Chris Showmaker for the outro, here's something that you wanted to talk about, a weather system.
Yes. Weather in Second Life is quite a problem. Unfortunately, we don't have some sort of general Linen Lab built weather system that works. And when it rains or snows, you have to pretty much almost install every single snowflake so that it won't rain inside all the houses.
Oh, yeah.
And I was very lucky to find a weather system, Ultimate Weather, that doesn't use emitters, because, emitters are they cause a lot of lag, and they are just generally rather annoying and very difficult to center, to make sure that they go where they have to go. And this weather system is called Ultimate Weather. That works really, really well, and it makes it rain in Berlin. We've got rain in Berlin at the moment, and it's fantastic. People are making photos all over the place, and it looks really, really good. It even makes little drops fall on the street. So that's really exciting. However, it's going to start snowing in Berlin pretty soon, and that means I have to go from house to house and every corner of the city and make the street and the pavement white. Again, that is such an annoying job. All the roofs have to be turned white just to give people that feeling that it has been snowing. However, Christopher Coffey, or Xavier Novelli, as his Second Life name is, we'll put it on the blog. We had a chat, and I said to him, can't you just make it so that when it starts snowing, that all those boards that right now show the raindrops falling automatically turn white? And he said, well, yeah, I could do that, which would, save people who have this system a lot of work. And he said, but I'm not sure that enough people are interested in that. So if you've got this weather system, or if you're just interested in having really cool weather in Second Life, send him a message, because he said if 20 people send him an in-world message, he's going to make it. So that would be really cool. That means you've got a system that when you push a button, all the streets go white.
20 people and he will make it snow.
Yeah, he will make the streets go white when it starts to snow. Just before Christmas, because that's when it started snowing in real life, 1929.
Yeah. Like Mariah Carey said, all I want for Christmas is
A weather system.
Xavier Novelli to make the weather system make it snow.
All
I want for Christmas is Xavier Novelli to make his rain system snow.
I am now so troubled. I think I'm going to have nightmares.
You can never unhear that one.
Thank you very much, you bastard.
That's it for the show. We're going out today with Chris Showmaker, fabulous artist in Second Life and real life. Her work is about avatar identity, among other things. She recently put out some avatars, some would call them mannequins, out into the streets of downtown LA. Ay. Here is Chris in her own voice. Make sure to check out her work at ChristineShowmaker.net. That's it for the show. Thanks, Joe, and goodbye.
Auf Wiedersehen.
I have an avatar named Chris Shoemaker, based on my real life self. My master's degree was all about comparing myself with my avatar, Gracie Kendall. I've always wanted to blur the line between the virtual and the real. And I've wanted to bring, the avatar into real life. I created avatars in real life by painting the mannequins. They've been in a few different shows. They were at UCLA, little art gallery in UCLA. I was loading them in my car, taking them home, and it was pouring. I stood there underneath the eaves of the building with one of the avatars to wait till it slowed down. The way she was looking, and I got the picture, so it looked like she was looking kind of forlornly out at the rain, like she wanted to be real. The mannequins that I paint are inspired by my digital avatar. What I did with Gracie is I took one of my real life paintings and I put it on Gracie as a skin. So all Gracie is the shape and skin of a painting. Somebody saw that and they said, "Oh, I'd love to buy that mannequin." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's digital." And then the next day I was driving around and I'm like, duh. So I immediately bought mannequins on Amazon. Had them shipped, and I gessoed them, I epoxied them. They look like they're moving, which I wanted, which represents the avatar. And I painted them in my style. Amazon sells everything. And I looked up mannequin, and they have a wide variety of fiberglass mannequins, and they don't ask questions. Are you kidding? The next step in this project is I want to do plus size mannequins, more overweight, more realistic body shapes and sizes, and they're hard to find. I found a few, but even the poses aren't very good. So I'm either going to do that or I'm going to have a mold made of my own body. Another project I'm actually working on is I'm going to project Gracie on top of me. It's called the Paper Doll Project, and I've already done tests and I've already applied for a grant for it. Gracie is going to be projected on top of me, and I'm just going to be wearing panties and a bra, and she's going to be changing outfits every 20 seconds, and she'll change into 100 different outfits, including hair, skin, clothes. Again, comparing the ideal Gracie being, thin and tall and beautiful with me, who's, a little shorter and overweight and, has the buzzed head and, the whole bit. My relationship to my own body has changed with my avatar. I think in that it's made me delve deeper into myself. I have an eating disorder. I go to counseling and stuff like that. And I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for my avatar. So just the psychological aspects of comparing myself, or of being the avatar, of going around Second Life and being being encapsulated in or projecting myself onto my avatar, who's this tall, thin girl who is very attractive, who people talk to all the time, guys talk to all the time. That doesn't happen in real life. So to see the difference in the two, it challenges my thinking in real life, the ideal versus the beautiful, and definitely having the avatar that I do in Second Life absolutely makes me continue the dialogue. A lot of people that I'm surrounded by are very concerned with their body. They go to the gym twice a day. I mean, they go to cardio bar in the morning and then yoga at night. They are always on diets. Oh, I have to look this way for my husband, or, oh, I need to look this way for my wife. I listen to them talk and I cringe, because first you have to be happy for yourself. And society does it to themselves, but if the media didn't do what they did, society may not do it as much.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Leap Motion, SL Go By On Live, Stitcher, Ison, Bot Girls Identity Circus, Carvel Design, Vika Creations, Humanoid Animations, Escapades, Botanical, Death Row Designs, Angel Red Couture, Fallen Gods Incorporated, Blue Moon Enterprises, What's Next, Avacon, and Landscapes Unlimited. Contact the show via Skype Drax Files, Avatar Drax Files, or email radio@draxfiles.com.